First things first, then. Marvel, your new logo sucks, and nobody likes it. I know it's the 10th anniversary of Iron Man, and you wanted to do something special, but Jesus Christ, did you have to do it with an eyesore? It looks like a trailer for the 13 movies you made since, which comes across as both insecure and grasping, which is odd for the biggest going concern of the biggest movie studio on the planet. But I guess there must always be balance in the world. DC just got a logo that doesn't suck, so guess you had to fill in the gap somehow. Well, we've certainly come a long way since the last Doctor Strange movie, haven't we? Hell, most of you probably don't even know about the straight-to-DVD animated movie Marvel Studios made with Lionsgate back in 2007. My review of it got worldwide blocked by Lionsgate as soon as I tried to put it on YouTube, but who cares? Now we've got a whole new Doctor Strange movie to forget about. Directed by Scott Derrickson, who most of my colleagues know as the director of Sinister, but I'll forever know him as the director of Hellraiser Inferno, first of the direct-to-video Hellraiser sequels. A bad cross between Bad Lieutenant, no, not that one, the original one, and Jacob's Ladder, with a coat of Pinhead slapped on at the last possible minute. Which is, sadly, typical for direct-to-video Hellraiser sequels. Had some decently directed bits, though. I remember thinking to myself, you know, this Derrickson kid, he's got some chops. And wondering what he might do with himself if he ever escaped the direct-to-video ghetto. Thanks to the $5 shelf at the 7-Eleven near where I used to live, I even own his Day the Earth Stood Still remake. But every time I think about watching it, dishes that need doing, or a floor that needs sweeping, or a toilet that needs cleaning appear before my eyes. Like magic. The script for this Doctor Strange began under the two guys who made the Conan remake. So I'm glad Derrickson brought in his own writer friend to punch it up. And goddamn if C. Robert Cargill isn't an internet film writer made good. From the bowels of guerrilla film to the heights of the Marvel Disney empire, via his own highly praised indie horror movie that I'm going to have to track down now. It's a career path made in an old school Evil Dead fan's heaven. Another sign that dreams actually can come true, and good things actually do happen. At least, to some of us. If we have the right friends. We'll see about the rest of us. I guess I'm supposed to be happy Doctor Strange got his own origin story in the first place, rather than having it sandwiched into the middle of someone else's movie. That's apparently the game we're all playing now. Gods help us. I think I know why it took him 3 writers, though. Doctor Strange's origin is actually a tougher nut to crack than you'd think. In its original form, as I'm sure I've mentioned, it was only 8 pages long. A backup story that ran months after Strange's actual debut, and is by far the least interesting thing about him. I don't know if it was a complete afterthought, but I see a whole hell of a lot of signs that point straight to Afterthought Island, including its astonishing similarity to the origin story of Tony Stark. A brilliant, but narcissistic technical prodigy learns how to give a shit about something other than himself after a traumatic, debilitating event alters the course of his life. No surprise, since these two are almost twin brothers, with only a 4-month gap between their debuts. Debuts? Debuts. What's surprising is, no one in all the years since has really figured out how to deal with the fact you can barely see daylight between the two of them until they get their powers. And so they hired TV's Sherlock Holmes, Benedict Cumberbatch. His American accent distracted at first, but I got used to hearing broadcast school dialect come out of his mouth by the end of Act 1. Good thing I stopped watching Sherlock 2 years before everyone realized how bad it was, or this issue might have persisted. New Smaug, then, is Dr. Stephen Strange, MD, PhD. A brilliant neurosurgeon who's obviously an arrogant prick since he's always so right about everything all the time. Like every other doctor protagonist on TV. It's plain to me everyone at Marvel Studios thought old Shirley could carry this movie all by himself. Because Strange has only 2 real moments in his origin story. One, when he gets into the car accident that crushes his hands. Don't drive distracted, kids. And the other, when the Ancient One of Camartage lets him in on the worst kept secret in this or any other comic book universe. That magic is real. And all the arrogant positivist dicks out there are so full of shit it's leaking from their eyes. Hey, just like in real life. For some reason, probably having to do with Iron Fist and his astonishingly similar, if slightly more Batman-inflected origin story, the gods of Marvel didn't want to make Kamar-Taj a hidden city somewhere up in the Himalayas. Though we do teleport to the Himalayas as part of Strange's training montage. Instead, it's an unassuming door down a random alley in Kathmandu. And I think I like that a little more. Great thing about magic is that the laws of space and time are more like best practices. This is something the Thor movies never understood, with their foolish insistence on going, "Oh, don't worry, they're just aliens. Long-lived, to be sure, but there's no such thing as magic, children. Merely technology too advanced for your tiny human intellect to comprehend. Like Asimov said, lo those many years ago. They aren't really the gods of a pagan pantheon come to life, merely the aliens that inspired them. Like you read about on the internet, or watch on the History Channel." Instead of all that runaround, here the Ancient One forcibly blasts our protagonist through the various levels of existence, revealing his paltry little universe is but one stream in a vast multiverse. Officially labeled Earth 199,999, which is an annoying mouthful. Especially since if it were just one Earth over, I could easily label it Earth 2 times 10 to the 5th. And so art imitates life imitating art. It's nice how the infinite vastness of the multiverse winds up looking like a bunch of nerve endings, or synapses. Especially the dark dimension, ruled over by the eternal, universe-eating entity Dormammu. I like to pretend it looks this way because our protagonist has, conceivably, stared at nerve endings and synapses every day of his life since before he got into college at whatever absurdly young age. It's the best image his brain can come up with in the face of the infinite, and I can't think of much better. I don't know, maybe a giant spider web. Or a really big tree, but those are 2 other guys, and we just got Spidey back from Sony. The civvies aren't ready to see him go cosmic yet, I don't think. Sorry, Madam Web. Keep watching. Thus begins Strange's training montage. Once again, the Karate Kid part of our adventure, I called it, before Mr. Miyagi became a Celtic woman. I like Tilda, though, especially in this role. Her superficial resemblance to Avatar Aang, from the good Avatar franchise, is the only thing close to a problem I have with her. In fact, paint an arrow on her head and she'd be Avatar Yang Chen. Our villain and his followers also have kind of an airbender theme going. They make all of their swords out of the air, much like they did in Strange 07. Speaking of which, hey Lashif, how the hell's it hanging? And what is up with Mads playing villains who have something fucked up about their eyes? Jesus Christ, no wonder everybody's so afraid of typecasting. Carcilius here gets points for not being yet another evil Tony Stark. But on the whole, unfortunately, he's still flatter than Judge Doom after he gets hit by that steamroller. He does get to set the tone and announce the theme with his first words to the Ancient One. Hypocrite! Favorite word of pissed off teenagers everywhere. And he gets one good speech about how linear time is the true enemy of all life. Oh, me and my crazy death god cultists who are running around killing people? No, we're not the enemy. The second law of thermodynamics, now there's your enemy. Blech. But that's pretty much all he's got going for him. For the longest time, even his villain monologue kind of bugged me, and I finally figured out why. It's eerily similar to Malcolm McDowell's villain monologue from Star Trek Generations. Time is a predator. It's stalking you. That whole thing? Yeah. No movie should remind me of an odd-numbered Star Trek movie if it can at all help it. Also, who the hell greenlit a film with a villain who has the word silly right there in his name? especially since Doctor Strange has battled deities from every pantheon on Earth and several other planets as well, from Set to Satan to Death herself, along with many a creature that I can only describe as Lovecraftian. Why in the name of all those gods would you stick him with a second-tier C-list antagonist in his first outing? Oh, don't play coy. You know exactly why they did this. Yes, I do. It's because they didn't want to use Mordo the first time out. Better, they seem to have thought, to save Mordo for the already greenlit sequel. Maybe he can bring in Nightmare. Our director has gone on record saying he wants to do Nightmare, and I don't blame him. I too would like to see Nightmare try and take over the whole of fiction again. In live action. I can see all the heads of all my colleagues who like to throw the word meta around exploding right now, like some memory of the future. Whether that happens or not, I like the Mordo we get here better than any of his previous incarnations. And not just because he's Solomon Northrop. It's also because he was the bad guy in Serenity. And also because his motivations here are the same as our villains. Previous Mordos have always been upper-class patrician bastards. Transylvanian royalty, out for power, but too fucking chicken to just become vampires. Here, for once, he's not driven by jealousy over some half-trained amateur usurping his place in the line of succession. Instead, he's driven by disillusionment over the hypocrisy of his master. The same thing that makes Karsilius want to sell Earth out to Dormammu. Mordo just takes it to a different place. Turns out the Ancient One's been stealing power from Dormammu to unnaturally extend her own life, having looked into the future and realized, as another, more freelance champion of reality once put it, that there's always another apocalypse. She clung to life to help stave those apocalypses off, always knowing that it would never be enough, and that she would eventually force all her disciples to deal with the fact that there are worse crimes than hypocrisy out there. Karsilius couldn't handle that, and Mordo barely keeps it together. But over the course of this apocalypse, Strange alone learns that time is not a predator. Nor is it the benign companion Captain Picard thought it was all those years ago. If anything, time is a teacher, instructing us through lessons that are, on occasion, fucking harsh. But if we learn from them and grow through them, instead of wishing for a past that was gone as soon as we realized we were in it, we will emerge better people than we were. The watch Strange keeps carrying around is symbolic of this. A broken relic of the past he can never return to that ends up as a reminder of the lessons that past taught him. Like his hands, which he does not heal by the end of this film, despite the fact he easily could. The lessons those scars taught him wound up saving the world. Indeed, the entire universe. And thus, Strange alone earns himself the title of superhero. If that sounds like basic superhero 101 shit, that's because it is. But that kind of basic shit is precisely what's gotten drowned out in a hail of noise and cross-promotion and endless fucking trailers. It's nice to see someone still remembers. Besides Zack Snyder, but you see what happened to him. At the same time, there is at least some innovation in the how do we show magic in live action game. All the reality warping powers everyone gets in the mirror dimension are like red meat to an old MC Escher fan like me. Especially during the mid-film fight/chase scene through the mirror universe of Manhattan. Always knew this Derrickson kid had some chops. I love being right all the time. Fuck all the comparisons to Inception you might have read. If this had come out in 2007 or 8, all the same hacks would have compared it to The Matrix, and they'd have had an even stronger case. This is exactly the type of shit I expected Neo to get up to in Reloaded. Why waste time kung fu fighting when you can fold up the ground under your opponent's feet like an old shirt? Hell, teleport it to the surface of Jupiter, assuming such a thing even exists. And if it doesn't, hey, the high-pressure helium seal crush him like a beer can, so you and science both win. It's better than the usual magic energy blasts or magic melee weapons, both of which also make an appearance. Some Strange fans, that I know, and who have told me this personally, feel our hero comes to believe in magic too soon this time. They rightly point out that most previous versions of his origin have given him a long lead up to that point, after which most, if not all, of his natural affinity for the mystic arts are unlocked, and he becomes basically the most powerful thing in his entire universe. Well, apart from various and sundry god monsters, but we'll get to them, maybe. Here, Strange takes a guided tour of the multiverse, and only learns his specific skills gradually, as the film goes on. And not to cause any rows with my Strange fans, but I vastly prefer this. It makes for a better movie, and it makes our protagonist far more relatable than all the half-baked one-liners in the world. Besides, just like in real life, half-trained amateurs will either be the death of us all, or they'll save us all by thinking outside the box for the first time in literal ages. Rather than beat the big bad with a giant explosion, they'll beat the big bad with Groundhog Day. Being trapped in a time loop is bad enough for those of us who have to experience linear time, moment after grinding, humiliating, demoralizing moment. But for an entity who transcends time, it must be pure, unalloyed hell. Who would want to conquer a universe infested with that shit? Best to strike a deal with its self-appointed defender and fuck off as soon as possible. Now that's the Doctor Strange I know. These days, my measurements for all new Stranges boil down to, would I trust this motherfucker to convince the animating life force of eternity to not destroy the Earth because we suck so much? Believe it or not, this was an open question for me for most of the runtime. Because Benedict Cumberstrange... sorry, that's the only one of those I'm gonna do. Is also subject to another trend I've seen more and more of as time goes on, where the protagonist, especially a sci-fi or fantasy protagonist, must, as if by unwritten law, maintain ironic distance from the plot of the film he's in, even as he participates in it 110%. We see this in all the bad jokes Strange substitutes for a real personality, or in the one personal detail we get, his Wikipedic knowledge of pop songs from the 70s, like Bob Seger's Catmandu. I call this phenomenon the Chris Prattening, after its most obvious Typhoid Mary. Though Ryan Reynolds really is patient zero for all this. But hey, one good Deadpool movie apparently gets all your past transgressions forgiven, and there are plenty of transgressions to go around. Strange's once and potentially future love interest, Christine, gets one of the shortest ends of one of the shortest sticks I've seen a love interest get in quite some time. Even Copycat. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Not Copycat. Just Vanessa. Got more scenes, and more personality. Though on the other hand, Christine never gets kidnapped. Nor is she a haunted car. So her plus and minus columns are pretty evened out. Pretty good summary of the film itself, now that I think about it. I also kind of like how these Marvel movies have jumped on one of James Bond's bandwagons. And now they all include an end credit that reads, "Character whose name is in the title will return." As if there's any fucking doubt about that. Even if there was, you completely allay it by tacking on a trailer for the next movie to the end of this one. Which I guess I should appreciate. At least it's not a trailer for someone else's movie. Oh wait, there's one of those too. Fuck.